The Last of Us Part 2 has been the victim of tremendous criticism regarding its story. This game is possibly the most divisive game in a while, as critics seem to love the game and others have mixed feelings or absolutely hate it. I believe the criticism of the game is both earned and unearned. I will get into why that is, but for now, let's briefly go over the main focus of the story. The story of The Last of Us Part 2 sees us controlling both Ellie and a new character called Abby. We control both characters as they explore Seattle for their own goals. As the story continues, you will meet new and interesting characters and see how the story of Ellie and Abby intertwine with one another. My biggest issue with the story is the length. This game should have ended at least 3 to 4 hours earlier. By the end of the game, I definitely felt that it overstayed its welcome. Besides this, my other biggest issue with the story, which goes hand in hand with the length, was the pacing. The story of this game is told in days, unlike the first game, which was told in seasons. Between each day, there is a flashback sequence, and these flashback sequences are sometimes too long. I also felt that some of these sequences should have been made into cutscenes instead of playable sections, or just cut out entirely. The worst part about these flashbacks is how they take you out of the story you are currently invested in, or at least I was, and just completely ruin the pacing. These parts make the game feel even longer than it actually was. This is where the first game excels. It is just so perfectly paced because there are no flashbacks between each season. Instead, you are just thrown into the next sequence. As for the characters in the game, I actually found myself enjoying everyone I encountered. Yes, I even grew to like Abby. If I am being completely honest, I think that Abby's portion of the story was definitely more enjoyable. The scenarios that I found myself in playing her were much more interesting. From an abandoned hospital that housed some of the first patients of the outbreak, to a war zone in which you are trying to sneak past two factions fighting one another. I found myself more invested in her story. And this brings me to this game's best quality, besides its graphics. The best part about this game is the gameplay, specifically when playing on the highest difficulty, because I am no chump. This game maintains the same gameplay loop of engaging in combat, puzzles, and exploring areas to scavenge for ammo and loot to upgrade yourself or upgrade your weapon. Although the core of the gameplay is still the same, it is significantly improved compared to the first title. This is because of all the newly added features, starting with the improved movement of Ellie and Abby. Both characters can now go prone to slip past patrolling enemies, dodge melee attacks, and jump around freely. All of these new actions lend themselves nicely to combat. Speaking of combat, you will mainly come across guns you've used in the first game. Each character has their own weapon loadouts, and personally, I enjoyed Abby's loadout much more. To make up for the lack of new guns, there are new craftables like a silencer for your pistol, explosive bow ammo, and incendiary shotgun shells. Possibly the most powerful weapons in the previous game are back and better than ever, and I am of course talking about the mighty brick and bottle. On another note, one of my biggest problems with the previous entry was the lack of variety in the enemies. This is no longer a problem. There is a good variety of infected now. You have the traditional clicker, runner, bloater, and the stalker, which has been reworked so it can be more unique. You also have a new addition known as the Shambler. As for the humans, there are two factions, the Wolves and the Scars. Each behave differently and have their own unique enemy type. The Wolves have these cute dogs and the Scars have some mini Hulks. I think I enjoyed fighting the humans much more as the AI for them has been dramatically improved from the first game. They have actually outsmarted me a couple of times throughout my playthrough. Hell, even the friendly AI has been improved as well. They were definitely more helpful and can even be spotted by enemies, which makes the game much more immersive. Possibly the best part about the combat areas is that you will sometimes find yourself facing both humans and infected at the same time. One thing I loved to do was pit the infected against the humans that were hunting me, so that I could save ammo or stealthily escape. Oh yeah, even the puzzles this time around were not as tedious as the ladder and pallet puzzles from the first game. Most of these puzzles are not even necessary to do and just involves using a rope or cord to traverse the environment. So it's actually pretty simple stuff. Even though I have mixed thoughts on the story, I can say without a doubt that the gameplay definitely makes up for it. I think both games in the series are equal to one another. The first for its story and the second for its superior gameplay experience. So if you could get past the flaws in the story, then I would definitely recommend the game. Thanks for watching.